Thanks for joining me today. My name is Cari. I'm the chef and owner of Chef Cari Kosher Catering, Chef Cari Street Eats, and Walk and Carry Out, all very uniquely delicious eateries in and around the Detroit area. Today we're gonna make a few traditional and modern kosher classic dishes. We're gonna make a pickled cabbage salad that's gonna go really well with a traditional Hungarian chicken paprika, and we're gonna finish it with a Romanian apple cake. All these foods are prepared from scratch. They are all delicious and they were all kosher. So thanks again for joining me in Chef Cari's Kosher Kitchen. For our main course today, we are going to be cooking a very traditional Jewish dish called chicken and paprika with nokala, or in English, chicken and dumplings. It's so common in pretty much any Hungarian household, Jewish or not, to have this dish. And what makes this one uniquely kosher is that there's no addition of sour cream, which is in like every dish if you are Hungarian or of Hungarian descent. So keeping to the laws of kashrus, we are not adding dairy to our chicken, but we're also not missing anything. We're gonna make a really, really nice, creamy, yet earthy and smoky sauce, because we're gonna be adding a ton of paprika, which is what the dish is named after, Hungarian paprika. There's also hot paprika. There is sweet paprika. I'm not into hot paprika. If you are, you could definitely use it. But I'm gonna keep it traditional, a nice bright and sweet Hungarian style paprika. Our thickening is gonna come a little bit from flour. So we're gonna actually sear the chicken, get a really nice crust on it, take the chicken out, use the schmaltz, which is the star of any dish with chicken in it, rendered down chicken fat. That's gonna give an amazing flavor. And we're gonna cook some onion and a little bit of garlic in there. Chicken paprika also often, I should say, has the addition of maybe peppers or celery. I'm not a huge fan of peppers, but for the sake of tradition, we'll cut this guy up and add it with our onion. And then we're gonna add a ton of paprika to the onion, mix it, add a little bit of water, and then braise our chicken right back in that same pan that we seared it in. And after that cooks down for about 15-20 minutes or so, we're gonna have chicken paprika. The dumplings are cooked separately. While the chicken's cooking, we're gonna fill up the pot of water. I'm gonna make a really simple classic dumpling. In Hungarian, it's like a spoon dumpling. In German, it would be a spätzle. So it's really just flour and egg and water, like super simple. But the flavors from this dish are pretty much nothing you're gonna find in any just baked or roasted chicken dish. So the first thing I'm gonna do is break down my chicken. I prefer to work with a whole chicken, and then I can break it down, cut it how I want it. I can use my neck pieces for stews, sauces, flavors, whatever I want. I can trim some of that skin off and that fat, which is like gold, literally. This is what I want to cook my food in, and not necessarily the oils, but this is my flavor, this is my fat. This is what gives really, really amazing flavor to all sorts of dishes. So I'm gonna just separate my dark meat from my white meat. I've got my drumstick, my thigh. There's a little bit of excess skin and fat on here, but again, when you're cooking from scratch and you're doing pretty traditional food, these are the things that are gonna flavor your food, and you're not gonna need to add anything extra. So I have two things I can do now with this wing. I can cut the wing off right at the joint, or I can cut off the wing with a little bit of extra meat, and then whoever gets the wing also has a big chunk of chicken too. So we have a whole chicken here. If you're definitely not into the white meat or dark meat, you could use just pre-cut, broken down chicken. You could use probably 6 or 8 chicken thighs with drumsticks, or you could use probably 4 to 6 chicken breasts. I would cut them in half so they cook a little bit quicker. I removed the neck and the backbone. Again, this is going to make a chicken soup or a stock just full of flavor. I'm also going to sear it and keep it in my dish because there's so much flavor in there that just doesn't really make sense to get rid of it. So here we have the other drumstick. I'm just looking for like way excess amount of skin or fat. Before I clean up from this chicken, I want to season it first so that I don't have to go back again. I'm going to put the in here. I'm going to turn my Dutch oven on. You can also use a large frying pan, but I'm just going to get this on a bunch of medium heat, and I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of oil. I can also render down this fat, but I'm actually going to save this for something else for another time. So I'm going to use just a little bit of oil so that the chicken doesn't stick, because once it starts rendering down, this skin and the fat is going to come out of the chicken, and it is just going to be all the flavoring agents that we need. Alright, so I've got a very coarse salt here. The 3 flavors that are coming from this chicken are the chicken fat itself, the Hungarian paprika, and salt. So I don't mind being a little bit aggressive on the salt. The pepper's going to give it a little bit of a kick. It's not really going to bring too much flavor though. There, do you guys hear that? That is a sear, and that's the sizzle that you want. So I'm going to do skin side down. And I'm hoping that I can get this whole chicken in once so that I don't have to do 2 batches. But I have to remember that if I overcrowd my pan, that sear is not going to happen. I can also season the underside of the chicken, so I just got the top and a little bit of pepper. Browning on that chicken. So I'm going to pull this out. And then I'm going to save my chicken skin for another time, which again, slowly render this down with a little bit of water, a nice wooden spoon, and a lot of patience, and cracklings. That's it. You're going to have the treat or snack of your whole lifetime. Not too many things better than slowly cooked chicken skin. But we'll do that another time. So the sauce is not comprised of all these different vegetables and things like that, but the onion, it's a great starter. So I'm just going to break down this onion. You could use a Vidalia, a yellow, doesn't really matter. And this is going to be the beginning of our paprika sauce. Like I said, I'm going to do small dice. This knife is interesting. And there we go. Rough job is fine too. Doesn't have to be perfect. Pepper is optional. I'm not a fan of peppers, but the flavors in the pepper are a little bit unique to this dish. I'm going to pull out this last piece of chicken, and I got the neck in here too. So I have probably about a tablespoon of rendered chicken fat in here. I'm going to keep that in there. That's going to be the base of my sauce. I'm going to start with the onion, and we'll get that starting to cook. It doesn't need too much time, but I also want to get all that raw flavor out of there, so we'll let that go for a few minutes, and then we'll add our green pepper. I've seen people add celery at this point. I think if you're accustomed to something, you grew up having it a certain way, go for it. That's one kind of reason that I'm not huge into recipes, because it's more about making the food that you like and making it familiar to what you're used to and adding the ingredients that you have on hand. The one thing I can't stand is when people go out and buy a whole list of items to make one recipe and then they're stuck with all these ingredients. Unnecessary. If I did not have a green pepper, I would not be putting it in. So I'm just gonna break this garlic down. I'm gonna start with 2 cloves of garlic. If you're super into your garlic and you want to add more, there's really nothing that should stop you from adding more. So I'm just gonna start with 2. But I'm not gonna add this right now. I'm gonna wait until my onions are cooked down, because I don't want this to burn. So I'm gonna just get the skin off, do a little mince, a little bit of a rough chop on this. And then I'm gonna go check my onions. I'll stir them up, make sure they're not burning, and then we'll be ready to put the dish back together. So I got my onions going. I'm gonna add the celery. Cook that down for another minute or so. I'm gonna actually probably use that bowl to make my dumplings in. So I'm gonna add a little bit of salt and pepper again at this point. One to help break down the onion and get the moisture out, but also it's another way to layer the flavors of your dish. Every step of the way kind of needs, especially when there's, we're not using boxed or canned stocks, we're not using any cream, we're not adding any other flavor elements. So I think it's very important to season your food as you go. So my onions and peppers are looking really good. I'm going to leave them for a minute. And I'm just going to season the water that we're going to make our dumplings in as well. Don't need a lot. But if you don't flavor the water now, it's really not going to flavor any other time. So I think at this point we're ready to add the paprika and the flour to our vegetables, because after we do that we're going to top it with our water and then add the chicken back in. I'm going to throw the top on it. It's going to braise until it's cooked. So I'm going to start with a couple tablespoons of flour. The last time I made this, I used about 2 tablespoons. It definitely gave a nice body to the sauce, but it wasn't a thickened, like, very heavy sauce. The dumplings is really where you're going to get that texture and that the fillingness. So I'm just going to, I'll probably just stick with 2 tablespoons. And I'm going to do that right now, right to the pan. I want to make sure to mix it before it starts to burn. There you go. Now, at home, I'm not a big measurer, so it's important, again, to know if you have made this dish before and you can feel like, oh, it might need more than 2 tablespoons. There's really nothing that should stop you from adding more, especially on the paprika. I'm going to start with about 2 tablespoons, because again, it's a paprika sauce. So I'm just going to stir that up. This is going to be my thickening and flavoring agents in the dish. And once that kind of cooks out for a minute or so, you can't really tell by looking if you would need more, but I'm going to add my water. If I feel like I want to add a little bit more paprika and I don't cook it out, it's going to be okay. It's not going to change the way that the dish is put together or tastes. But it does look, I smell it, kind of toasting that paprika. And I'm just going to add with a measuring cup, about 1.5 to 2 cups of water. You definitely could use a homemade chicken stock or a broth. I'm not a huge fan of the pre-made boxed or bouillons. If it's what you have and you really enjoy it, definitely go for it. I find that this dish is very flavorful. You're not lacking by not using a broth or a stock. Again, we're going to be adding all this chicken and the bones right back to the pan anyway, so essentially we're making our own stock, but it's also going to be the sauce for our dish. Okay, so we're just about there. Now this time I'm going to put the chicken back in, but skin side up as opposed to skin side down. I already got that sear on the skin, and now I just kind of want to braise it. And I'm going to try to piece it in so that all the pieces fit. This is not a 2-batch kind of dish at this point. I do want to get it all cooked at the same time. So I'm just going to submerge the pieces, and if I do need to move them around a little while they're cooking, totally fine with that. You can see the beautiful color from the paprika. It smells delicious. And after this last drumstick, I am going to throw this neck in because again, it's going to create another level of flavor as if you made a chicken stock from scratch right in your dish. This is also flavor. So the chicken, while it was resting, it released a little bit more juice. There's no reason to waste that. So now, we're gonna let this come to a simmer. It's already starting to simmer. I did forget to put my garlic in. It's definitely not too late. Get this in now. I would have preferred to have sauteed it with my onions, but that's the beauty of cooking. If you can catch it before it's served, you're good to go. Like if you cook something and you taste it and you don't like it, there's really no reason that you can't fix it. You need a little salt, you need a sugar. Alright, so this dish is cooking. I love doing these dumplings right into the pot. So after I make my dumpling batter in here, I'm just going to stand over the pot and spoon it in with my spoon. It's going to give a really nice rustic, ununiform dumpling, but that's really what you want when you eat these traditional homey foods. I'm going to start with 2 cups of flour, and I'm going to put them in my bowl, and then I'm going to make a little bit of a well and add my eggs and water, and that is the whole dish. So a lot of our recipes from generations before us, they're not so accurate if you try to just make them today, because what is a cup? This is a measuring cup. I don't know that that's what they used. So I'm going to start with 2 cups of flour, and I'm going to mix together my eggs and my water, so that way I don't have all this liquid that's not incorporated. So I'll just use the measuring cup, and I'll just go ahead and measure my cup of water right in here. And I'm actually going to use something bigger, so that way when I put my eggs in them, they don't spill all over. So I got my water. I'm going to add 2 eggs to that. I'm going to put that with the flour though. I'm going to mix the salt in, make a hole in the middle, mix my eggs with my water, and then incorporate them. I think every community, every region has some kind of really simple dumpling. Asian dumplings, European dumplings. I think one thing the world can agree on, dumplings are really good. So we're gonna do the simple dumpling, and all you do is incorporate the water, the flour, the eggs, and the salt, and then we're just going to drop it into the boiling water, which we're just about boiling. Before we do that, I just want to check on my chicken. It's at somewhat of a rolling boil, which I don't want to boil this chicken. I just want to simmer it. So I'm going to cut it down just a little bit, put the top back on, and then we'll check it again shortly. We're not looking for a stiff dough, but we do need something that when you do stand your fork up in it, it stays. If it falls down, well, then it's a little bit too wet, which would still make an awesome dumpling, but for this particular dish, I know what I'm looking for. I want to achieve that texture, and the only way I can really do that is by adding a little bit more flour. Okay, so now we're gonna check on our apple cake. It's been in for just under an hour. Alright. It looks great. Put this over here. But I really can't tell if it's done. If I stick this guy in and it comes out clean, that means that the batter inside is cooked. Very homey, family style. We would just put this cake on the table. Maybe we could dust it with a little bit of confectioner sugar. But there's really not too much else that this cake needs because it is such a classic, simple cake. So I'm just gonna move it out of the way, let it cool down. And on to our dumplings. Our chicken is almost fully cooked. We just checked the color. It looks beautiful. It's still simmering away. So I'm gonna keep the top off at this point and let the sauce reduce just a little bit. The white cloudiness is from the flour. Helped it thicken up a little bit. I'm gonna turn it a little bit lower. I hope it looks like it's on low. And my water for my dumplings is ready. So the dumpling recipe is really simple, like we talked about. Most areas have, oh, you know what? I think we did our sample, so we're gonna go ahead and just go for our batch. Our sample came out great. So I'm gonna take 2 cups of flour to do another batch. 1 and 2. I'm gonna season that with a little bit of salt. And then I'm gonna make a well in the middle to add my liquids. I'm just gonna use this cup. I'm gonna add a cup of water. Two eggs that I want to mix together with the water. Just gently whisk the eggs and the water together. And whisk that salt in. And then just incorporate the liquid in the center, slowly bringing in the flour from the outside until it's nice and mixed. Okay. So we want the fork to be able to stand up in the batter. Not a stiff standing, but just that it should hold its place. So my water's come to a boil. I'm going to use the spoon just to kind of flick the dough off the side of the bowl right into the boiling water. It's pretty traditional. Nice way to do it. There, it's much thicker now. My fork is not really sliding down. If I add a little bit more flour, I could add it. It wouldn't really affect things too much, but if it's too much flour, it could be a little bit stiff and tight. And if it's too watery, if it's too liquid, then your dumpling won't get that right texture. So I'm gonna do a few in this water. Give it 2 to 3 minutes. In the meantime, our chicken is about done here. I'm just gonna check to see if it's done. If you don't have a thermometer, a really good way, I'm gonna put this right on the board here. Just gonna see how it looks on the inside. Perfect. This chicken is ready. I'm gonna put this guy back in. The sauce looks delicious. It smells good. I'm gonna turn this off and just kind of let it hang out until we're done with our dumplings. So our little sample dumpling packed up to the top. We're just gonna give it another minute or 2 to simmer. And we have a really nice texture on that dumpling. It's not uniform, which is perfect because really it's a dumpling. We used a spoon to drop it into boiling water. Very traditional. Reminds me of the kind of dumplings that we had when we were growing up. So I'm gonna get these guys out of the water. They don't need any other special equipment because as soon as the chicken is done in the sauce, we're gonna combine the two together. I'm gonna let these dumplings cook for another minute or 2. And what I wanna do is put them on the bottom of my bowl. If I was serving the family now, I'd have a big platter. I would put the dumplings down and then cover it with this delicious sauce and the chicken. Again, in our house, a double batch of dumplings, totally not unheard of. So sometimes I do like to serve them separate. But for a nice meal, you want to get chicken and dumplings, you want to get the right amount of both. So for a nice size serving, I'm just going to garnish it with a little bit of dill. You could also use fresh parsley. And then we'll keep that for our pickle salad. Which again, that sharp vinegar pickle flavor is going to go so well with this dumpling dish. So we'll make that next, and then we'll have our complete meal. So our dumplings are ready. They've come to the top and they've simmered. I'm just going to take a few out so that we can plate this delicious chicken paprika. I'm going to lay those down on the bottom of my bowl. A couple pieces of chicken. There we go. Delicious. This sauce looks. And that dumpling is going to just soak up the flavor of that beautiful color. Clean my plate a little. And then a little bit of fresh dill. Again, you could use parsley. But this is a very traditional Hungarian kosher dish called chicken paprika with dumplings. So I hope you guys try to make this one at home. And again, serve it with the pickle salad that we're about to make next. Hi, welcome back. So chicken and paprika and dumplings is just about ready to eat, but we really need to serve something with it, not necessarily before it as a starter, but something that will really digest well with it, and that is something pickled. So other than kosher, pickles being one of the most recognizable Jewish style or kosher dishes, there is something called a pickle salad. And all it is the same flavors and profiles of a really good dill pickle. It's got the dill, the garlic, the vinegar, but instead of pickling cucumbers for a long time, we're just going to do a quick pickle salad. For this salad, I usually serve it with a heavier entree. So it's not something that I would serve as a starter to a meal, like an hors d'oeuvre or an appetizer, but it is something that I like to serve with a meal that maybe needs a little bite of acid or vinegar. It's just to help digest it. And since the dumplings is on the heavier side, it's not something we have regularly. It is definitely a special occasion food. I want to serve this salad with it in place of a coleslaw or a garden salad. It just doesn't really have a place here. So I am gonna just shred or thinly slice about 3 pounds of vegetables, including white cabbage. I love this recipe with radishes. The market didn't have any, but the dish is not going to be any different. You use what you have. So we have cabbage, a Persian or curling cucumber, and you can add fennel, you can add a regular cucumber. If you're going to use a standard cucumber like this, I suggest peeling it and taking the seeds out because it's a bit pithy. It's like you don't want that flavor. You just want the texture of your cucumbers. It's going to pick up that flavor of your pickle dressing either way. So you don't have to worry too much about the cucumber. If it was a curling cucumber or a Persian style cucumber, I would not peel it or seed it because it's very mild. Put this right in my bowl. And then we have, like I said, today we have this cucumber. I'm going to break it down a little, get that core out. And after these vegetables are cut, we are going to make the dressing for it, which is really a nice, almost you could call it a vinaigrette, although there's no mustard or sweetener in it. So it's going to be equal parts of a white vinegar with an oil, and we're just going to mix together some salt, pepper, and garlic in there. You could see this skin, the seeds inside, definitely a bit more. This is resemblance of a pickle inside, but we don't really need this texture in our salad. Plus it's just gonna break down anyway. So we're just gonna pour it out, make quarters, and then the point of your knife can really just easily take out the seeds. This also works well with zucchini when it's very pithy and thick and you wanna get rid of that those seeds on the inside. So I'm just gonna thinly slice this as well. I'm gonna add it to my bowl, and then we're gonna make the dressing. Really quick salad to put together. I call it a pickle salad because it tastes like pickles. So if you don't like pickles, make something else. All right, and so for our dressing, I'm gonna mix it right into the measuring cup. We're gonna use a half cup of oil. And since this measuring cup, oh my God, about a half. I'm gonna eyeball it, but we're gonna have about a half a cup here, 4 ounces. And then about 4 ounces of a distilled white vinegar. I'm not looking to be super creative on this. The white vinegar is really the flavor of a good, pickle. So I'm gonna use white vinegar. I'm not looking for a red wine or balsamic. I'm gonna heavily season this with salt because that really is our flavor. Garlic, I prefer garlic powder in this instance just because it's instantly gonna take to the flavor. If I was making a real pickle from scratch, I would definitely use whole garlic cloves and let that kind of penetrate the flavor and really get in those cucumbers. But since we're doing a quick pickle salad, I'm just gonna grab a fork. If you had a little whisk, you could use that too, but really, I just want to incorporate this. And then we're gonna pour it right over our vegetables, give it a nice toss, and then let it sit for about 15 minutes. And then enjoy it, the crispy, crunchy, vinegary, pickly flavor with our really nice, earthy, and warm paprika with dumplings. So that should be plenty for there. If I had a bigger bowl, I'd probably get my hands in here, but I'm just gonna use the fork, coat it really well. The last thing we're gonna add is fresh dill. Dill pickles. You can't really be without your dill. So, a lot of greens, and there really are guys that just check that produce all day to make sure that there's no bugs in our food. So it is kind of important to debug as a kosher consumer and as a regular consumer. You really know how many people want to eat garden bugs. Not me. So I'm just gonna add this fresh dill. You can use a ton of dill if you'd like, or keep it minimal. Just gonna use enough for right now to get the flavor. Mix it up again, let it sit. That salt is already starting to break down the cabbage. After 20 minutes or a half an hour, this cabbage is gonna shrink by almost half, and it's gonna be sitting in a really nice liquid dressing. That is what we just made. So again, we're gonna let that hang out for a while and check in with our apple cake. Hi, welcome back. So with our delicious kosher meal that we've made, we're gonna finish it with a really sweet traditional apple cake. So in kosher cuisine, like we talked about, we are gonna have a dessert that doesn't have any dairy in it, since we don't ever combine dairy and meat products together. And since we're having chicken, this apple cake has got the most simple, basic ingredients, but it's gonna have a yummy, crunchy and sweet flavor from the apples. It's just sweetened with regular sugar, and it's gonna be a nice light and fluffy cake. Really traditional, nothing fancy going on here. So I'm just gonna get these apples sliced. I got 5 apples, peeled, cored, and thinly sliced. You can use any apple you like, but I don't really want too much of a tart apple for this kind of cake, so I got like a Fiji. Gala is good as well. We do a lot of catering at home at Chef Cari Kosher Catering, and when we do desserts, we sometimes have to think of recipes that don't rely on the dairy. We don't need butter, we don't need heavy cream. There's really not too much out there that we can't get with an alternative milk or a butter ingredient these days. So it's actually quite easy to cook kosher meals with a full dessert that you don't feel like you're missing anything because there's no dairy in it. But this particular apple cake, it's very traditional. It's European style, between Hungarian and Romanian desserts. This is one of those apple cakes that pretty much most families grew up eating. So again, my name is Cari. I'm the chef and owner of Chef Cari Kosher Catering, Chef Cari Street Eats, and Walk and Carry Out, which are 3 of the best kosher eateries in the Detroit area. And of course, they're all kosher. So I'm gonna use this bowl here, and I'm just gonna first mix together my 3 eggs. And this cake is so simple and easy. There's literally no equipment needed outside of really a fork and a cake pan. I'm gonna add 1½ cups of sugar. You can substitute honey if you needed to, but this is a nice cake. It goes a long way. So there's 1½ cups. And I'm gonna mix this till it's well incorporated. And all I'm gonna add to this is my oil, my baking soda, a little vanilla, and then I'm gonna fold in the flour. Like, it probably couldn't get too much easier. If you wanted to use a stand mixer, I guess you could, but again, why? So that's nice and incorporated. A teaspoon of baking soda. Mix this in lightly. It doesn't need to be overworked. Pretty much all the flavorings. I guess if you wanted to add some almond extract at this point, that would be a really nice flavor profile, but a really nice simple apple cake. It doesn't really need too much more. So now that that's incorporated, I'm going to slowly add about 2 cups of flour, actually the oil first. I have 3/4 of a cup of a very neutral oil. I like baking with coconut oil. It gives a really nice texture. This, you could also use a vegetable or canola oil, but I definitely advise something very neutral. I would not use olive oil in a recipe like this. So I've got my oil in. It's a really nice wet batter. So to this, we're going to add about 2 cups of flour, and again, just till it's incorporated. I already have my oven preheated to 350 degrees, and I'm going to use a 9x13 cake pan or a 9-inch round cake pan. You could also use a bundt pan. Spring form pan, I don't know how that would work for this cake, but the last time I made it, it came out perfectly in a nice square pan for people who like those kind of crispy edges on a cake. Or my daughter likes the soft middle of the cake. So, you know, she's a center cut kind of gal with her cake. So I'm just gonna add the 2nd cup of flour and slowly incorporate this. And once this is incorporated, I'm gonna spray my pan, just a little bit of pan spray. You could dust it also with a little bit of flour, but I've never really had sticking issues with this type of cake. I'm going to put a thin layer of batter down, and then I'm going to throw all these apples into the cake, and then I'm going to tap it with the rest of the batter to coat the bottom of the pan and the top of the pan. That was a little too big. I'm just going to put a little bit down here, kind of spread it out with my fork. It'll definitely spread while it's baking. A little bit more here, and then I'm ready to pour my apples on. This cake is going to bake for about maybe 40 to 50 minutes, and we'll check it to see if something like a toothpick comes out clean. So I have that. An alternative to this cake would be tossing these apples in a little bit of cinnamon and sugar first. Another thing you could do is to cook these apples. This is an apple cake, so it's predominantly apples, but these must have been huge apples. I'm going to probably leave one of these back. But yeah, if you cook these apples, caramelize them with a little bit of sugar, a little bit of cinnamon, and then top them with the batter, I mean, you're talking about a whole nother level of yummy cake. But this is just super good. It's traditional. It's really, really easy. You see that it kind of came together in, about maybe 5 minutes. And it's a cake. It's very forgiving. So if I have a space that's not covered with batter, it's gonna be perfectly fine. I do want to try to get most of it off. And again, I'm doing this whole cake with a fork and a mixing bowl. You really don't need special equipment. Okay. Go. Okay. So again, we'll check that probably in about 45 minutes and clean up a little and get ready. When our cake comes out, we're gonna try it. Okay, so we got our apple cake out of the oven. It came out so easily onto this beautiful serving platter. You could serve this, like I said, with confectioner sugar, which we have. You could make a nice glaze with maybe a little powdered sugar, a little bit of water, and just drizzle it over. It's such a simple cake. It really doesn't need too much. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut a nice little piece. Oh, the crust that the top made sounds good. The smell of it is unbelievable. Just such a fresh, simple cake. Just gonna take a little slice out of there. So good. And I'm just gonna dust it with a little bit of powdered sugar. Again, what makes this dish uniquely kosher is just simply that it doesn't have any dairy in it, which means we can enjoy it after having a nice chicken or meat dinner and not feel like we're missing out on anything. So here's our traditional apple cake. We also have our pickled salad that the longer it sits, the better, but it's getting there. It's really nice, fresh, vinegary dill. It's gonna cut that heaviness of this traditional dish called chicken paprika and dumplings, which I have a big bowl of right here. And we're just gonna top the whole thing off with our delicious sauce. And this is what you guys can enjoy for dinner any night of the week, or on Shabbat on Friday night for a nice special occasion. A little bit of a heavier meal. So as we learn with kosher cooking, it's really just fresh ingredients. We really make everything from scratch, which isn't something that everybody does, but I really like to make from beginning to end the food that I'm eating and feeding my family. In Detroit, again, we have Chef Cari Kosher Catering. We have Walk-In Carryout, which is the only Glatt Kosher Cantonese Chinese carryout in Michigan. And we also have Chef Cari Street Eats, which are a unique running of some food trucks that we send out all over Detroit. And what these things all have in common is that they're all made, the food is all made from scratch, it's all delicious, and it's all kosher. So thank you for joining me. I'm Chef Cari, Chef Cari's Kosher Kitchen, and hopefully we'll see you next time.